Hello, I'm BR VetMed, and today, in under 4 minutes, I am going to try and explain as succinctly as possible how the MRI scanner works, what's going on inside of it. Often at vet school, you're taught how to read the MRI scans, the images, but you're not taught exactly what's going on inside unless you're an engineer. So I've taken the magnet and I've sort of split it so you can see what's inside. There's the table for the patient, by the way. This is the radio frequency coil, and then you have your gradient coils, and that is the MRI without its outer casing, if you will. Now, the magnets and the coils have very specific functions. The coils emit and detect changes in radio frequency signals. Now, that may sound a little bit confusing, but they're releasing radio frequency signals for a certain reason, which I'm going to explain, and then it's detecting changes in those signals. So the magnets force protons, H+, which is found in water, H2O or H2O, to align in phase with the field. So each nucleus has a sort of nuclear spin, and it's going to be aligned in phase with the magnet. Then the radio frequency pulses through these H+ ions, and it causes them to spin out of equilibrium. And as a result, the changes that happen and the return to phase is what's measured and allows us to make an image. So we can take an image from different planes, almost like angles. Now, I'm using a snake here, but obviously it's very rare you're ever going to be doing MRI on a snake, although it's not impossible. This is the sagittal plane. Can you see that the slices are being made from side to side? Next, we have the coronal plane, and that, as you can see here, is a series of slices moving from front to back of the animal or even person, as most MRI scanners that you use in veterinary medicine were actually originally made and then subsequently adapted for humans, and then they're further adapted for animals. This last plane here is known as the transverse plane, and it goes from top to bottom. So there are types of MRI imaging. It's not just a case of understanding that the protons are coming into phase with the spinning magnet and then returning to their own spins and being hit by radio frequencies, and we're measuring what's happening to them, finding those H+ ions, finding water. On top of this, we need to look at some key terms before I move on. TR stands for repetition time. This is the time between the repeats of radio frequency pulses passed through the body to get those H+ ions. Now, they're not ions technically, it's part of water. TE, time to echo. This is the time between the pulses being sent and then a radio frequency change being picked up by the receptors. And CSF is cerebrospinal fluid or cerebral spinal fluid, either way you want to put it. Now we can move forward because you understand fully what's coming in a second, because you need to remember these terms for this next slide. Let's have a look at T1 scanning. A T1 scan has a short time of repetition and a short time of echo. You'll notice that the CSF, the cerebrospinal fluid, appears dark in these images. It's a great way to spot if it's a T1. T2 has a long TR and TE. You'll notice CSF appears white effectively. And then we have flare. And actually we also have a T2 star weighted, but that's a little different. On the MRI image we have white, grey and black colours. White stands for high density, grey shows intermediate density and black shows low density. This density refers clearly to the presence of H+ protons, which is found in water, in soft tissue or a bleed, but usually one would do something different for that. But in tumours, in syringohydromyelia, etc., you're going to see this wonderful inflammation full of water. Now, the other thing that I should mention before I go is that actually when you are looking at an image, you can only say there is an area of high density here. For example, you can't say, oh, there's an area of meningitis, or there's an area of bleeding. You can't say that really. When you're using diagnostic imaging, it's very important that you use the correct terms. You can't diagnose anything fully just from one thing. You need to do blood tests, you need to do other assessments. So stick to these terms. Thank you for listening.